This is the Fan-Made Film Podcast.
Hi everybody and welcome to the Fan-Made Film Podcast. I'm your host, as ever, Rachel Pearson. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening to this new episode. This episode's great, a little bit different actually. We're talking about motion capture fan film creation with Damien Valentine, aka Darth Angelus, on YouTube. We talk about his series, Heir to the Empire, and explore something a little bit different. As well as motion capture, we're talking about the expanded universe of Star Wars, something that I myself have just started getting more interested in since I was quite disappointed with the sequel trilogy, the recent sequel trilogy, the Rise of Skywalker in particular. So I have been searching, as well as fan films, I've been searching elsewhere in the expanded universe for the Star Wars stories that bring me a lot of joy. And Heir to the Empire and Damien's series has been one of them. He has been tinkering with video game modding since the 1990s, so he's been in this for a really, really long time, and he's produced a phenomenal amount of content. What's really exciting is to see the improvements in the technology with every single episode of Heir to the Empire. As you'll hear, it started out as a bit of an experiment, but has been wildly successful. So do go and check out the Fan-Made Film Podcast Season 1 fan film watch list. Heir to the Empire is on there and his film Imperials is on there. But do go and check him out on YouTube and have a listen to this great episode where I chat with Damien Valentine.
This is Thrawn. Go to Red Alert and tell me what we've got. Calmly, if possible.
My name is Damien Valentine. I'm the director of Coded Transmission Studios, which makes a lot of animated films. I'm currently working on the Star Wars Heir to the Empire fan series, which is a lot of fun. But I've done other Star Wars projects before, like Imperials. Going way back, I did a short video called Death of Jar Jar, and I've done some original work as well.
Awesome. What made you pursue this career, this kind of filmmaking kind of direction? What was the catalyst for that, do you think?
It was, I don't remember the exact name of it, but I remember watching some very early Star Wars fan films, and I thought, that looks like it'd be a lot of fun. I grew up with Star Wars, so it's been a big part of my life always. And I like telling stories. And when I saw people making fan films, and I thought, I want to do that. The problem is, at the time, I didn't have any kind of video camera. I mean, everyone's got one now on their phone, but this is going back about 15 years. So I had no camera. I didn't really know anyone would want to go in front of the camera. So that was kind of tricky. But then I thought, well, what about animation? Because I can do whatever I like in an animated form. And I know people all over around the world, over the internet, who do actually wouldn't necessarily get in front of the camera because there isn't one, but they would happily lend their voices to me. And so that is really how I got started. And I had a great time making that first film, which is so terrible now that I am not going to show it to anyone.
We're always our worst critics, I think, though.
Yeah. But so I made it, and then I thought I really enjoyed doing this, and then I did some original stuff, and then I came back to Star Wars around the time of Revenge of the Sith, and just kind of carried on from there.
Fandom initiated.
Yeah, amazing. So you've been making films for 15 years or so.
Yeah, it's strange to think it's been so long.
Yeah, and your love of Star Wars, your interest in Star Wars, how was that kind of, do you remember your first kind of experience of Star Wars?
I don't know if I can remember the first time I ever saw Star Wars, but I remember my parents taped A New Hope when it was on TV, and I just watched it over and over again to the point the tape was wearing out and it was all fuzzy on the screen. And I just loved it so much. I kept watching the Battle of Yavin over and over again. It's just because I really like the X-Wings and I wanted to be an X-Wing pilot. And I must have been only about 5 years old. And then I remember I got my friends into it as well at school, and we were running around the playground, and I remember the teacher telling me off because I was trying to make a TIE fighter engine sound. So I got into trouble for that.
That must have been hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another thing, I kind of wish I could make a video of that.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to actually see, because I've been talking to a lot of filmmakers, which has been super interesting, and asking them sort of, you know, similar, like, where did they start out in terms of filmmaking? When did they where their first love of Star Wars mostly come from? And they all, well, a lot of them have sort of mentioned, oh yeah, well, you know, I remember running around the playground, like telling people your Han, your Leia, and kind of directing people. I'd love to see someone make a film of that kind of experience. That would be it's very heartwarming, I think.
Yeah, maybe that's something I have to look into as my next project.
Yeah, how people, play. I had a really good conversation with someone the other day where we were talking about how you're kind of your most creative and free self when you're a child, and you come up with all of these crazy, amazing ideas, and you don't really have any sense of, oh, well, that's not possible, or we can't do that, or all of that kind of stuff. You're just like imagination overload. So cool. So you've been filmmaking for a really long time, and you've created so much content. I've been looking through your like YouTube channel it's taken me a long time to like look through all of the content that you've been creating. It's so interesting to see the evolution of the kind of motion capture animation work that you've been doing. Tell me a little bit about where your ideas for those films come from.
Well, I spent a lot of time doing a Star Wars series. I call it the Darkness Saga, and the characters are actually role-play characters that I created, one for myself and I had a friend in Canada, and so and I thought, wouldn't it be fun to take some of these stories that we role-played and make a video out of them. So I talked to her about it, and she voiced her own character, and she's really good at it. So we did it, and then and I thought, okay, that was a lot of fun. So there's a lot of, we kind of time jumped a bit with the role playing as well. So I thought I can make some videos that fill in the gaps of what happened in between some of our stories, and it kind of becomes like the pivotal moments of our character's history that we didn't necessarily role play, but they're still important. I mean, it's kind of like the original trilogy. It's the pivotal moments of Luke Skywalker's life, but you don't necessarily see everything that happens in between the films. I kind of treated it like that. So that's how the Star Wars projects really came about. And then when I finished that, I thought that was a lot of fun, but I want to do my own thing now. So I was looking at some of the sci-fi shows I was watching, and I really like Battlestar Galactica, and I like this kind of very dark tone of it. So I came up with Chronicles of Humanity, which is my original science fiction series. And I wanted to tell a dark sci-fi story, and that just kind of came together.
Yeah, and I was looking around for your Buffy film, Buffy the Vampire Slayer film. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it because I'm a massive Buffy fan, and with all of the lockdown stuff going on, I'm going through yet another rewatch of the whole series. And then I realised your name is kind of like borrowing from two fandoms, which is pretty cool. Your pseudonym, Darth Angelus, so yeah, that's pretty cool.
I'm glad you picked up on that, because that's exactly what I was going for.
Win. I couldn't find the Buffy film, so anywhere or
it was on YouTube, but there were some issues with the music, because when I made it, I had no real awareness of copyright music, and at the time YouTube wasn't that strict, but over time they kind of asked me to take it down. But I've still got a copy of the videos. I can send them to you to have a look at.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Love to see it. Big Buffy fan.
I will warn you, it's very rough.
Well, okay. I think a lot of the time when something, you have to have a good story with something like that. So if there's a good story, you know, other viewers will forgive you other things, I think.
That's good to hear. And
so motion capture, I'd love to know a little bit more about your kind of end-to-end process that you have with that, because my understanding of motion capture is very, very basic, as in I've seen Andy Serkis run around in a motion capture suit for Lord of the Rings, and that's about it, and the sort of special features.
I've seen a lot of the videos of him doing that, and it does look like he's really enjoying himself. So in those videos, you see him, he's got a bright coloured suit, and there's all these balls around, and then he's kind of got dots all over his face. What I do is a little bit different. I found a couple of years ago this company called, you know what, I can't remember the name of the company either. It's terrible.
Okay.
But they made a motion capture suit, which is affordable for people at home. So I've got one of the sensors here, actually. So I thought you might be interested to see, and I know that this is going to be audio, so I'll describe what I'm holding up. It's basically a square with the sensor attached.
Oh yeah.
And then I've got the strap here, which goes, this is an arm piece, so I go around my arm, and then this wire will then plug into the next sensor, which,
Wow.
so this would go up here, and then the wire goes down to the sensor that would go on my wrist, which is also the whole glove thing. So yeah, I found this motion capture suit. I thought this would be really helpful because I was starting to work on Star Wars Imperials, and I had lots of stock animations, but what I didn't have would be good lightsaber dueling animations. There's some sword fighting animations which I had, but they're the one hand with a sword, one with a shield, and that's not what you'd expect from Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I discovered the suit, and I thought that would be perfect for what I want to do, and it would give the film unique animations rather than stock animations that lots of other people are going to be using in their videos.
Yeah.
So I saved up, which took a couple of months, and I bought it, and I was kind of waiting there eagerly for it to arrive. And like this Scott Pilgrim, when he sat in front of the door waiting for the Amazon parcel, that was basically me.
Yeah.
So finally it arrived. I unboxed it and I got it, put it on, and it took me a couple of weeks to figure out exactly how to use it. And I was just so pleased that I could run around my living room pretending to be in Star Wars, and it counted as work.
That's the dream.
Yeah. So I did that. I got two of my friends are really good with martial arts and sword fighting, so I got them in the suit to do one of the lightsaber duels for me. So that was a good afternoon that we spent. And then there's one lightsaber duel I did myself, which is quite fun because I've only got the one suit, so I had to do one side of the fight, and then I had to turn around and do the other side of the fight, and trying to remember where all the blows were to make sure they all lined up. That was fun. And then because I'm doing it in my living room, got the front window looking out, so people can, if they're walking past, they can see in. They must wonder what I'm doing. And then of course there was a romantic scene, so I was doing both parts of that to the air. So again, anyone looking in was wondering what's going on in there.
I was to be a fly on that wall.
Yeah.
Really funny.
Yeah, so that's basically what I do. I just do it in my living room. I don't really have a big living room, which is a problem, so I'm trying to weave around the furniture. And I remember at one point I did go outside and use it, because I got this, by the side of the house, this kind of long pathway, and I had to do this run, and the idea was this TIE fighter was coming down at the two characters and it was going to shoot at them, so they used to run, and the only place I had was down this passageway, so I did it a couple of times for both characters. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you essentially are acting all or most of the characters, kind of physical acting, and then you have voice actors for each of those parts.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, amazing. Unique way of doing
yeah, and so over time I've kind of refined the process, because when I was first, like that shot where I was talking about when I did the running along, I was memorizing the script and saying it to myself to make sure I had the timing right, and it was fairly close, but I didn't have the recordings then. So more recently what I've been doing is waiting till I got the recordings, and I'll edit together to a rough take of the conversation with how long I think the spaces between dialogue should be, and then I will play that loudly or with headphones so that I can listen to the conversations and know exactly what the timing should be for each piece of the conversation. And since I started doing that, I feel like the scenes come across a lot better.
Yeah, and when we were catching up before via email, you mentioned that the software is constantly updating, and you can see the increase. And so I've watched all of Heir to the Empire now, or all I'm up to date with Heir of the Empire now, and you can see so much kind of the quality of the animation kind of going up on every single episode.
Thank you.
Fairly uh, uh, like updates quite regularly, or is that, what do you put that kind of increase in quality kind of down to?
So the software itself, they had, I think the biggest improvement they had was late last year, around October, November time. They completely overhauled the texture system for the characters. So the skin quality and the textures looks much more real.
Yeah.
And they also released a plugin that you can take a photo and scan it in, and it'll generate a character model based on that photo.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So that's why in chapter 2, when you see Han, Luke, and Leia, I was really struggling to get them to look right, and they're kind of, I feel like they're slightly stylized versions of the character, but I want them to be more realistic. So I got that plugin, and trying to find high quality photos of the original cast, because the cameras back then weren't that great.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a struggle, but I eventually found everything I needed. So I got them in. So now that the character models from chapter 5, chapter 5 onwards, it's got their real faces, so they look much more real and close to the actors than they did before, which I feel like that was a huge step forward.
Yeah, the skin looks amazing. Even like Admiral Thrawn, his it's just not like a flat blue. It's
Yeah.
kind of
You can zoom in really close and you can see little pores on his skin, which
Yeah.
So far I've not needed to do that, but the detail is there.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So I cloned the software to do animation, but it comes with this sort of side package which is called the Character Creator, which does exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah. That's so amazing. It's like a really interesting process. And then I guess you direct the voice actors wherever they may be, and you've got some amazing voice talent as well, particularly the voice of Thrawn, Robert Benjamin. Is that right?
Yeah, Robert Benjamin.
He's great, and honestly, I think he kind of rivals. We haven't really seen Thrawn in very much, no live action, but only in Rebels, the TV series, I think.
Yeah.
And he really rivals the voice actor in Rebels.
I got a funny story about that actually, because I wrote the script for Imperials, and I knew that he would be really good as Thrawn, so I sent it to him and he agreed to do it. And then I went to Star Wars Celebration when it was here in London.
Yeah.
So about 2 days before I went to the convention, he sent me all the Thrawn dialogue. And I listened to it and I was really pleased, and I said, thank you so much. And I would start working on it when I got back from the convention. So I went to Celebration and I went to the Rebels panel, and I was there when Thrawn was revealed and they had the trailer and he came out and the crowd just kind of went wild. And then they showed the first 2 episodes of season 3, and I listened to the Thrawn voice and I thought, he sounds so close to what Robert S. Benjamin did, and Robert had no reference at all to go to. So I talked to him about what I wanted, and obviously what I wanted and what Dave Filoni wanted for Thrawn was very similar. And I was just so thrilled.
Yeah, you must have been absolutely like, I'm a genius.
Yeah. So then when he came back to do Heir to the Empire, he changed the accent a bit to be closer to the Rebels Thrawn. But otherwise, he's more or less the same as he was in Imperials.
Yeah, it's so good. And Richard Grove as well as Joris
Sabayos.
Yeah. He was great as well. Really, 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 really great. I think it makes a big difference in, fan films. that a lot of the ones that kind of haven't kind of don't really stand up are the ones where they haven't put that much time and effort into working with the actors or directing them or giving them any kind of like directing them, I guess, really. And there hasn't really been time in finding the right people for the right roles and stuff, and it really does let some of those films down. But yeah, and Matt Finnish plays a couple of different characters as well.
Yeah, I was so lucky to find him, because I don't think I would have continued the series without him. Because I made chapter 1 as a test, because I wanted to test out some ideas for space battles, and I thought, well, I love this book, so I'll just do chapter 1, and it'll give me a chance to have some fun with Star Wars and test out these ideas. And then I'll post it on YouTube and see if people like it. And when so many people did like it and started saying, you're going to do chapter 2, and I was thinking, I didn't really set out to do that. But then I kept having so many requests. I thought, okay, I'll give this a go. And I started looking at, if I'm going to do it, I need to do it properly. So the characters need to look like themselves, but they also need to sound like the actors who played them. So I started looking, I thought, I know that people do impressions of the characters, so I'll see who I can find who would be interested in doing it. And I came across his videos, and I thought, he is so good. He does pretty much every original trilogy character in his video. And then he did a prequel character video as well. And again, he just did them all so perfectly. So I sent him an email and I said, this is chapter 1 of what I've done. I'm going to turn the book into an animated series. Would you be interested in voicing it? And he came back to me, yep. And I was so thrilled. And because that was the biggest problem I had, was, can I get them to sound right? And then, so he's on board. He's really excited about the series so far.
He's great. His Han Solo is so good.
Yeah. I do enjoy when people commenting saying, I really like how close Han is, or how close Obi-Wan is. And I said, they're actually the same guy.
Yeah, there's some amazing people. There's a guy called Jamie Costa, who's an actor. I think he's an American actor, and he's been in, there was a live action Kenobi fan film and a live action Han Solo fan film. He's been in a couple of those, and he's another great person who's incredibly gifted at mimicking voices. Yeah, check him out. He's really good. I
haven't seen the Kenobi one, but I've seen the Han Solo one.
Yeah, pretty good. How did you find your actors, and did you go through a kind of casting process, or is it a bit more informal than that?
Mostly it's quite informal. So I've known Richard Grove for a long time. I've worked with him many times before on, he's voiced a lot of characters for me. I did some of the voices myself, so I didn't really have to cast myself. For Leia, I found someone in chapter 2 who did impressions, but I think she found the idea of doing a 32 chapter project a little bit too overwhelming. So I had to recast her for chapter 5 onwards. But again, I found the Star Wars fan film that Matt Finnish was in, and it was kind of a prequel to The Force Awakens. So he voiced, I want to say, Luke in that. And then there's obviously a Leia in it as well. And so I looked to see who that Leia voice actress was, because she was really good. So I sent her a message, and she said, yeah, okay, she's in for it. And she sent me a whole load of recordings for the next few chapters, which I'm very excited about. And then with characters that are not established in the films, I've got a bit more flexibility in how they can sound, because there's been some interpretations in video games and like thrown in Rebels, but other than that, they're mostly just alive in the books. So I did talent card myself, which was a lot of fun. I've got a friend who did Mara Jade. I know her through Richard Grove. And then with Winter, I have a friend who lives locally to me, who is just as obsessed with the book as I am. And so I asked her if she would like to voice Winter. She jumped on that, and so I took the recording equipment to her house because she's not that far away. So she recorded that. We spent an afternoon just going through the dialogue. And then I got my mum to voice Mon Mothma for me.
Oh, cool. Mum Mothma.
I have to remember that.
That was I'm so sorry.
No, that was good. Yeah, so I'm just people I know that I think I know what they sound like, or I know how they can do variations in their voices. I'm saying, do you like to voice this character for me? Because I kind of feel like they would be a good match for it.
Yeah. Do you think it's important for the actors involved in projects like yours, where there is obviously such a, like deep connection to the lore of a certain world or universe? Do you think it's important for them to have a good understanding of that world and of the mythology and that kind of thing? Or do you think being fresh and new to it brings something good to it as well?
I think it helps to understand the world that's in, even if I know I've read lots of the Star Wars books, and I've watched all the films, and I've watched all the animated series and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like I know it really well. But I think as long as you've kind of seen at least one or two of the films to get an idea of what this world is, I think that's kind of all you need. But the more you know it, the more familiar you are with it, the easier it is to sort of jump into it. I know that Richard Grove is not a particularly big Star Wars fan. I know he's seen the films, but I wouldn't expect him to have read all the books and anything, all that kind of stuff. But I did find the Wikipedia page for Jorah Sabaroth and said, "This is your character." And so I know he read that, and it kind of gave him an idea of what he's going to be like and how he's kind of not entirely stable. So he was able to bring that to the performance because he had that background just from reading the article. But most of the cast are all really into Star Wars, so I don't feel like I have to worry too much about them not being familiar with it.
Yeah, and a lot of what you've created is expanded universe rather than Disney era, like full canon. Was that where was that kind of how was that decision made? Why did you decide to kind of focus more on that timeline rather than sort of the newer stuff?
I kind of grew up reading all the expanded universe books, and I know there's some really terrible ones, but I just read all of them, and then I was a little bit disappointed when Disney decided they're going to go off in a different direction. But I understood why they did that. And then I came to Imperials, and I thought, I want to do a Star Wars fan film, because I'd seen the Force Awakens trailer, and I was getting really hyped up, and it kind of wanted me to make me want to do something Star Wars. And I thought, I don't know where Disney are going to go with the new timeline, because at that point, the only thing they'd released was, I think, season 1 of Rebels, and that was about it. So I didn't know what they were going to do. I didn't want to tell a story and then Disney do something that completely changes it. Then I thought, well, the expanded universe, they're not going to touch that. Nothing's going to change now, so I can do whatever I like, and it'll fit in without having to worry that some official production is going to say, actually, there's no way that could possibly happen. And I understand, because obviously the official stuff comes first. I'm just a fan having fun. But I like the stories to feel like they fit in with what's already been established.
Yeah.
And with Imperials, I had this idea of, what if there's a point that somewhere where the timelines diverge? So it goes one direction to the expanded universe and one to the Disney timeline. And so I had this idea that if Thrawn didn't survive the battle at the end of the Imperials, he'd get the Disney timeline. If he did survive, he'd go off and you'd get the expanded universe timeline. Because at that point, I didn't know what they were going to do with Thrawn or anything like that. So now that wouldn't work, because they've already changed so much around the original trilogy timeline. But that's what I went for at the time.
Yeah. I was I've had a mixed relationship with Star Wars myself of late, in the last sort of with the sequels and stuff, and I was obviously, as a Star Wars fan anyway, really excited about any new Star Wars content. And I hadn't watched anything like the Clone Wars or Rebels up until about a month ago. And I passed through all of the Clone Wars and Rebels sort of immediately after seeing The Rise of Skywalker and being quite disappointed with it, to be diplomatically worded in my critique. So I was like, I need to fix my kind of broken Star Wars heart right now, like with other things. And I think that's where fan films came in, because they're pieces of work that are made by really passionate, knowledgeable Star Wars fans, and it's kind of heartwarming to see that, you know, that amount of time and personal energy and budget go into those kind of projects. But also I wanted to watch Clone Wars, and in particularly Rebels. When I got to the end of that, I felt like my kind of Star Wars relationship with Star Wars had kind of been fixed a little bit, because it's such a great series. And then I think the next thing for me is kind of exploring the expanded universe a lot more. And new series has been a really good catalyst for that. I'm really intrigued by the character of Mara Jade, but I literally know nothing about her because I've never really touched any EU stuff before. So this has been a good kind of introduction into that sort of whole section of Star Wars, something that I love so much. You also get an incredible amount of views and comments on all of your videos. In particular, Heir to the Empire is relatively new. Like, you've been working on that in the last 9 months to a year. Is that right?
Just over a year since I released the first chapter, but then I thought that was going to be it, so I left it for a while. But 9 months sounds about right from chapter 2 onwards.
Yeah, you've had an incredible response from people, and I think that shows a couple of things: the quality of the work that you're doing, but how passionate our fans are about that, about Star Wars in general, but the expanded universe content as well. There's a lot of people really desperate for content around that, and yeah, it's kind of sad that Disney have kind of gone one way. Like, I kind of get it as well. And the stuff that they've done that I really enjoy, and I'm really enjoying The Mandalorian and that kind of stuff as well. Why do you think people have connected with Heir to the Empire so passionately and so quickly?
I feel like this is a tricky one. I think it's because I understand that a lot of people were disappointed with the sequel trilogy for various reasons. And for me, one thing I would have really liked to have seen, even if it's just one scene, was Han, Luke, and Leia together. I know the new trilogy is about a new set of characters, and that's all fine. But it would have been nice to see the original three together just once. And I think that never happened. And whereas with Heir to the Empire, it's all about them just 5 years after Return of the Jedi. And obviously the original actors, they couldn't play characters that were 5 years after the original trilogy anymore. And so I understand why they didn't decide just to redo the books. And also the books are very long, and you would miss out a lot by making it a 2-hour film. So there's a lot of disappointment for those films, whereas the Heir to the Empire project, you're kind of getting the things that are missing from the sequel films. And I did enjoy, for the most part, the sequel films. They probably not the direction I would have gone if I was running things, but I wasn't. So I went in as a fan. I had a good time, mostly. But it's not quite the same as watching the original characters that a lot of people grew up with.
Yeah, there's a big gap, I guess, between, you know, the Battle of Endor and where Return of the Jedi kind of finishes, and then when you pick up in The Force Awakens, so much stuff happens in those. You know, I would love to see them, or anyone, literally anyone. So big shout out, maybe you make a series or films of the Aftermath book series. Really exciting, and it touches on the lives of Leia and Han and Chewie Not so much Luke, because he's off somewhere.
Yeah.
First
Yeah, I don't think fishing on his island make for a particularly interesting book,
Yeah.
or a particularly interesting story. But
milking strange cow animals.
yeah,
I laugh about. But there's new characters in that are connected, and I'd love to see those stories get brought to life at some point.
yeah.
But it's a shame to kind of miss out on those middle years when there's so much interesting stuff. With Luke learning about his like Jedi life and how that all of the things that happen. But yeah, maybe we'll get it one day. Maybe.
Yeah, I remember it's a year or two ago. I saw an interview with Timothy Zahns, because he's been writing new Thrawn books to tie in with him being brought back into canon. And someone asked him about the ending of Rebels, and Timothy Zahns said, well, he had a 2-book idea of what would happen to Thrawn after Rebels. And I don't want to say too much, because if anyone's listening to this and hasn't seen it yet, I don't want to give her any spoilers.
Yeah.
So that's as far as that goes. But he said that he had the idea, but first Dave Filoni would have the choice of what would happen, because if he's got an idea, because he set up that ending, he might have something established. But Dave Filoni in turn couldn't do anything until Rise of Skywalker's finished, because J.J. Abrams might have an idea of some major thing that happens in between trilogies that would completely override the story that Dave Filoni was producing. So now that Rise of Skywalker's done, that those events are now set, so that they can now fill up that time period. So hopefully we will get more stories.
Yeah, I really want. So the next on my reading list is the Thrawn books, and he just through my point with that character, apart from the series that you've been making, is Rebels, and he really interests me as a character. And there's not much known, in a similar way to Yoda. There's not that much known about his species and where he comes from and stuff. There's very little kind of known. And I quite like that. And I was thinking this morning about that kind of stuff, which I do way too much. But I was thinking how cool it would have been if the big bad in Rise of Skywalker had have been Thrawn.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that. But on the other hand, Thrawn, I feel like if they'd done Thrawn as a villain, he should have been the villain for the whole trilogy, not just brought in at the end.
Yeah. It was kind of like it was a little bit like the first seasons of Buffy, where it's just like a different bad guy every episode.
Yeah.
It was a bit like that as well. Like, right, now it's Snoke, now it's Kylo Ren, now it's all of them.
Yeah.
and a jar of pickled Snokes to go.
Yeah. That's funny. I was thinking about that this morning as well. So great minds, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully. So what have you been enjoying most about your current series, in terms of all of the work that you've been doing to date on the first 5 episodes, and then 6 is upcoming, right?
Yeah, actually the background I've got here is it's the marketplace that's going to be in chapter 6.
Oh, great. Cool.
Unfortunately, anyone listening is not going to be able to see that, so you just have to watch the video.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd make a really good background for this Zoom chat. So, basically, what I've been really enjoying most is I read this book. I was about 10, so it's been a part of my life for a long time, and bringing what I imagined to life in an animated form, that's the real fun for me. Because I got so many good memories of reading that book, and I remember my parents we all went on holiday to France, and I was reading the book in the car, and some of the more exotic places we saw, I was imagining as locations in the book. So that I'm kind of drawing inspiration, like the planet that this marketplace is on, Bimasari. When the Millennium Falcon comes into land, it's kind of this big. It's not really described that well in the book. So what I imagined was this town, which was built up a cliff, because it looked so different from anything I'd ever seen. So when in chapter 6, when the Millennium Falcon comes down to land, that's what I've done, is I've recreated this town. I even went onto Google and looked up photos of what it looks like, so I could take some inspiration from that. I mean, it looks more Star Warsy than now, because I put Star Wars looking buildings in it, but that's what I've been doing, and being able to do things like that, and playing around with the famous characters and Thrawn, and just having a lot of fun with it.
There's in my travels around fan films, there's clearly a lot more Star Wars fan films, like that fandom kind of, there's a lot more fan film kind of content out there for Star Wars than any other fandom. Although, there are others that are coming to the fore a little bit more. Why do you think that is? Why do you think there is a lot more fan-made content out there with Star Wars rather than anything else?
I think it goes back to the early days of Star Wars fan films, when people were just getting whatever camera they could, and they were filming something, even if it's just a lightsaber duel in the forest, which that kind of became a joke in the community. It's another fan film, which is a lightsaber duel in the forest. But people are having fun, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But I think when George Lucas picked up on that, and he said, have fun, and he kind of encouraged people to carry on doing that. And so even though when Disney bought Lucasfilm, I know there was a kind of concern that, are Disney going to carry on allowing this to happen, because they've been very tight with the things that they owned before. But luckily, Kathleen Kennedy said, actually, we still want fans to be creative with Star Wars. So all throughout, the Star Wars fan films have been encouraged to be made. And I think that really helps, whereas other franchises don't necessarily encourage it so much. I know with Star Trek, they kind of did. Then there was a project that I think it was a Kickstarter, and they raised such a huge amount of money that the lawyers got worried.
Yeah.
And they kind of stepped in, and then now there's very restrictive rules on what Star Trek fan films can be.
Yeah.
Because I thought about, I like Star Trek as well. And I did for a while think about it'd be fun to do something that, but then I looked at the rules that this limits what I can do so much that it wouldn't be any fun. So I decided not to.
Yeah, there was lots of rules. I read a little bit about that kind of, they got taken to court, I think, the people that were making it. I think they made over $1 million or something crazy like that, just a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
They were like, I think it was Paramount who owned Star Trek, and they were like, okay, there's a bunch of rules now. It can't cost over, I think it was like a couple of grand or something like that, a really small amount for what you would need to make a Star Trek film.
Yeah. Because obviously people need to buy the uniforms, and they need to buy the cameras and any other equipment they need, which makes sense, but you don't need necessarily $1 million to buy that stuff.
Yeah, $1 million for a fan film. I mean, that's not a fan film, really, if you think about it.
You kind of, I think the Wrath of Khan had a budget of $9 million or something like that. So I know obviously the value of the dollar has changed since that film was made, but you're still not that far off when you're talking numbers.
Yeah. So I can kind of understand maybe putting restrictions when it gets to that kind of level. But Star Wars and Lucasfilm and Disney have very actively encouraged people to create and world build and character build and all of that stuff. And I think it's brilliant, because it means that we all feel like we kind of share and contribute to a part of this massive thing, like this massive thing in our culture, our worldwide culture, which is nice. And I think especially for professional filmmakers making fan films, it's their way of thanking this world, the Star Wars kind of world, for inspiring them to get into filmmaking in the first place.
That's kind of what happened with me, because those early fan films I made taught me what I needed to know about filmmaking, so that and animation, so that when I wanted to make my own thing, I knew how to do it. I didn't have to learn a whole set of craft just to make my own story, because I already had that knowledge.
Yeah. So have you made any kind of connections, like professional connections through your work? Has anybody kind of reached out to you, or have you been able to kind of show what you've been making to people, either other filmmakers or anyone else?
But I used to be part of this community. It's called Machinima, and it's not what the YouTube channel is known for now, but it was the style of making animated films by using video games. And I've gone to that for a while because there's so many Star Wars video games that I could use different games for different things I needed. So I'd use the Jedi Academy game for all the characters running around and fighting with lightsabers. And then I'd use Empire at War for the big battle scenes, because that's what it's all about, the big battles. And the Machinima community had so many people making all kinds of films using all kinds of different games. And for a long time I was part of that, but it kind of splits up. So people would only, if you want to make a Warcraft films with Warcraft, they would just go and join the Warcraft community and they wouldn't get involved. So sadly, it all kind of split up. Then the site changed and it became the YouTube channel that it was until recently. So I made a lot of friends through that. Some of them are still in contact with. I've made friends with a few professional actors who have been lucky enough to get involved in my films as well. That was that's been a big thrill, because you see them on TV or in a film and you think, now they're saying my dialogue, which I wrote. So yeah, that was, I've had some contacts like that. And also in 2007 I entered the Star Wars fan film contest, the official one, because it was the 30th anniversary for Star Wars. So they had a celebration in America, and a few months later they had one in London. And my entry was one of the 30 finalists. I don't know how, I think there also had hundreds of entries, but I was one of the finalists, which meant George Lucas himself would have watched it, because he had to choose
Oh my God!
The George Lucas Award. I have no idea what he thought. I didn't win, but just being a finalist was such a huge thrill for me. And knowing that they screened that film at both celebration events, they had all these screens set up around the convention. I went to the one in London. I sadly couldn't make it to the one in America, but they had screens and they were playing fan films, and I got to see mine there just briefly, because it's only a short video.
That's cool. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Were you planning on going to Celebration this year?
I would have liked to have done, but the problem I have is I had a great time at the one in London, but then all my friends were there. I don't know that too many people who would go to the one in America. And so the fun I had in London was because of my friends, and I'm sure I had a great time at America, but it's not quite the same when you don't know so many people. Usually I just watch the streams in my living room, like any interesting panels. I'll watch them and I feel like, I know I'm not there, but I'm still having a very similar experience.
Yeah, I'd love to go to one. I haven't been to one. I was thinking about going this year, but obviously that's not happening.
No.
But yeah, maybe someday soon I'll go.
Hopefully next time.
Yeah. So what piece of advice would you give to filmmakers looking to create a fan film, similar to your own or different, but just, you know, a fan film around Star Wars? What have you learned that you can pass on in terms of advice?
Oh, I think you have so many bits of advice. I would say, tell the story you want to tell. Think about if you've got a very limited budget because you're doing a live action film and you want to tell something big, do what George Lucas did in the original. Think outside the box. Try and look at things you can get cheaply and think, well, if I paint this a different color, it would look like a prop from Star Wars rather than, I don't know, a paper cup or something like that. So just, try and think outside the box. Don't limit yourself. And see what you can do, and listen to the people that you're working with as well, because they might have an idea that would really benefit. Like I said earlier, I went to two of my friends who were martial arts experts to do the lightsaber job, because I can do some basic lightsaber combat, but I wanted this to look good, and I don't know that much about it. So one of them sort of choreographed the fight scene, and then they both kind of acted it out.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. That's really interesting. And what do you think sets a great fan film apart? So, in terms of quality and that kind of stuff, have you seen any other fan films that you really, really like out there? Any ones that are kind of different in style?
Ooh. So I really like the Bucketheads fan film that was, I think it's last year. It followed some stormtroopers. It was very kind of gritty, but it felt like it was part of Star Wars. And you can imagine it being an official production. And I think that kind of helps. I know that not everyone can do that, but the closer you can get to the feel of Star Wars, the better. And when films like Bucketheads come along, I think that really helps a lot. And there's I don't know what it's called because I don't think he's released the title yet. There's this guy who keeps posting very short CGI clips of spaceships, Star Wars ships flying around, and it's a work in progress, and he's going to release it at some point. And even though it's all CGI, he's done something with the lighting that makes it look like the old model work that they used to do in the original trilogy. And yeah, I will try and find it, and I'll send you a link to that.
I do. I'll see that.
Yeah, and it looks like watching the old Return of the Jedi battles. So when you see the Rebel fleet going along, and the way it's all lit up, and he's been doing some various clips like that, and I thought, I can't wait to see this film. And obviously, he's putting a lot of work into it, so I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's definitely going to be worth the wait.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been inspiring me to do the same thing with. I don't know him, but I've watched his videos. So I want to get that kind of look in what I'm doing in iClone. I know that iClone's not quite as powerful as the software that he's using, but I'm still going to give it a go and try and capture that Star Wars feel.
Yeah, yeah. I do love the fan films that there's such a range out there. There's ones that don't touch on any kind of known characters at all and tell a little story, from everything else but set in the universe. And then there's ones that connect things up. And then there's films that the filmmakers have clearly tried to really capture that spirit of one of the original films, and just in the look and the style, and the kind of there was one of the guys I've interviewed so far created a fan film called Rebel Scum, which filmed on location in Alberta in Canada, just in the middle of winter. So it looks like Hoth, exactly like Hoth, and he's in a way where it looks so much like Empire Strikes Back. Like there's just this feel of it.
Yeah, I've seen that fan film. It's the one with the pilot going through the snow, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's another one. It's so good because it feels like it's happening alongside the Empire Strikes Back, like you said. And I always admire that.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So I've got one other question for you at the moment. No, two more questions.
Okay.
So I've been asking everybody if they could have been a part of and worked on any Star Wars film or series in history. They've got a time machine and they can go back and forth and wherever.
Ooh.
Any Star Wars film ever, which one have you been and why?
That's a good question. I suspect Empire Strikes Back is going to come up a lot. And I kind of want to say that, but at the same time, I do animation and computer animation, so that wouldn't have been a thing back then. So my skills would be completely useless for that film. So I guess it'd have to either be the prequels, because obviously there's a lot of CGI in the prequels, so I could probably do something there, or maybe work with Dave Filoni on Rebels or The Mandalorian. I've been watching the behind the scenes of The Mandalorian, the gallery show on Disney Plus, and the big volume screen that they've got. I want that, and it's the software that they use. I can actually, because I'm using the Unreal video game engine to produce all the visuals for it, and the software I use, iClone, has this plugin where I can create iClone stuff and then transport it into Unreal. So I could, if I really wanted to, I could take all of this background behind me. That's like, because the screen's going to be funny. I could take all of that and put it in the volume, and it could be in the Mandalorian, and it would take a couple of minutes.
Yeah, a minute, then it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's been interesting to ask that question, actually, because I also assumed that people would be like, right, straight to the original trilogy. I want to be working with George Lucas, the original cast, the original crew, the guy in the shorts that holds the boom mic, all of those guys. And it's funny because a couple of people have said that kind of answer. A couple of people have been, I really would want to work on the sequels, because they, I think because they feel they could have got in there and fixed and stuff that they thought did work pretty well. So yeah, a couple of different places to be coming from in terms of motivation. So my last question is, obviously you're currently working on Heir To The Empire, that series, and making chapters throughout the book. So my next question was really what you're working on next. Are you going to be working on anything else alongside Heir To The Empire? And when do you think you'll finish the book?
That last question, I don't know. It kind of terrifies me to think about it. But on the other hand, I'm kind of working on chapter 6 and 7 back to back. And once I finish chapter 7, I'm a quarter of the way through the book, which is a strange thing to think about, because it doesn't. Even though I know I've got loads more chapters to do, quarter of the way through the book is a big milestone.
Yeah.
I'm working on a friend of mine in America has done I can't talk too much about it because it's not my project to talk about, but he's done a sci-fi film, and he asked me to do some space battle footage for him, because he's done a lot of voice work for me, so I kind of owe him a favor. So I'm kind of working on that in between, trying to juggle Heir To The Empire and that. And I was working on a Chronicles of Humanity, which is my original series story, which is kind of a prequel to everything I've done before. So it's set about 50 years in the future. And I was working on that, and it's a very dystopian nightmare future. And I thought, no one's going to want to watch this at the moment. And I don't want to make it anymore because it's too real. So I thought, I'm going to set that aside, and maybe I'll rewrite it and do something different. But it's too real, and it doesn't really. So I kind of keep looking at it, thinking, I want to do. It's a good story. At least I feel like it's a good story. I mean, I'm a bit biased towards it, obviously, but maybe it needs to be different.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people have been saying that, because I'm working on my first live action short film at the moment. It's maybe going to be about 20 minutes long, very short kind of production, and just in pre-production on it. And it's sort of it's a film about, it's like a short horror film, but horror in the same way kind of Midsummer was.
Okay.
Not like typical jump scary, but kind of more brain scary, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's all kind of about grief and horror, and I was like, I don't think people are going to want to see this.
Well, I mean, people will want to see that around Halloween. I don't know if you'll be able to make it in time for Halloween, but Halloween happens every year, so maybe you could do it the following year or something. I don't know. But yeah, the world I kind of created was, the idea was the energy was running out, and Earth was kind of recovering from all these wars and disease and things over the last 50 years. And I thought, nope, I'm not doing that.
Maybe if it's about the recovery, though.
Well, it is, but it's humanity's in such a bleak situation that it's not going to survive much longer. And then you kind of have this mission that will solve a lot of the problems, and it follows that. But humanity kind of comes to the brink of self-destruction, because obviously you've got politicians who are only interested in scoring political points, so they're trying to, they're trying to do that at the risk of wiping everything else out as well. Again, it feels a bit too real at the moment.
I was
So
going to say, I'm not sure whether you're talking about your series or actual real life.
yeah, so
We'll laugh about a little bit, just keep going.
yeah. So I might sit on that for a while and figure out what I can do with it.
Yeah.
And earlier you mentioned my Buffy series, and I started thinking, what would my characters look like if I recreated them in iClone now? Because at the time I was using this really old video game, so they're very blocky, and even the mouths and the faces don't change because they're just painted on, and that's it. That's how old the game was. And I thought, well, if I created them now in iClone and these really realistic characters, what would they look like? So I started tinkering around with that. And then, of course, once you start thinking around with characters, you start getting story ideas. So I don't know what I'll do with that just yet, but maybe I'll do something with that because it's about vampires. So I don't have to worry that too much about people might not want to watch that just yet. And that's, of course, vampires are the next thing that happens in 2020.
That's the next thing 2020 has in store for humanity. Actual vampires.
Yeah.
At this point, I would be like, okay, cool, that makes sense.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, zombies, vampires, Godzillas, everything.
So that might be the thing with your film, is that might end up being real as well.
Yeah, maybe. Oh God, I hope not. Oh, amazing. Well, this has been really good fun. Thank you so much, Damien, for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, great. And best of luck with the new series. I am an avid viewer now, and I'm going to be really excited for episode 6 and 7 and hopefully many more.
Well, I can tell you that I've only got one scene left to animate on chapter 6, so it's not too far off.
Not too far off. Awesome. Well,
it might be the death of me because it's a huge crowd, but I'm still working on it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll have to check in with you maybe in a few months' time and see what else you're working on.
Oh, I look forward to that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Hey, it's Rachel again, and I hope you enjoyed the episode with Damien. This was probably one of the first podcasts I recorded, which is why the sound is a little bit dodgier than the other episodes, which is a shame, but hopefully you enjoyed that episode and got a lot out of it and are inspired to go and explore the world of motion capture for your potential fan film projects. So thank you very much to Damien. Definitely go and check out his YouTube channel. If you Google at Darth Angelus, you'll find it. Or if you look at the FANMADE Film Podcast Season 1 watch list, you will find some of his films on there as well. As ever, if you've got any fan films that you've been working on or you have a fan film that you really love, please do let me know by emailing fanmadefilmpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can follow me on the social channels of your choice. Twitter at FanFilmPodcast and Instagram at FanMadeFilmPodcast. Slightly different there. Next episode, we're going to be talking to Michael Fitzgerald, who made a Stormtrooper fan film last year, or I think maybe it was 2018 now, and he's currently working and very close to the end of the second episode in this kind of series based around the Stormtrooper kind of character and arc. His film has a really like war combat-esque Band of Brothers feel, and he talks a little bit about drawing inspiration from those kind of films and series. So do check us out next episode with Michael Fitzgerald of Stormtroopers, and don't forget to watch Stormtroopers on the Season 1 playlist on my YouTube channel. But for now, as ever, may the Force be with you.
Set blasters on full.
This is the FANMADE Film Podcast. This is the Fan Made Film Podcast.